Hello, my bookos, and hello, virtual JaneCon viewers. I'm Bianca Hernandez-Knight, and I'm going to talk to you about designing and executing costumes for a production of Emma. It's an adaptation of Emma, and I'll get into all the little things about that in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you today about the process. So to give you an overview, I'm going to be talking mostly about just kind of like what it takes, like what is behind the scenes, like the kind of top level. How do you even begin this? How do you take nothing and then make sure that actors have costumes? And how do you do the process of design? This is specifically inspired by so many conversations that I have with fellow Regency fans online, fellow historical costume fans online, about historical costuming and fashion, and specifically historical fashion and movies and TV and streaming shows, and just like my experience from like now being inside of it from years of being an outsider, and just talking about like why it is really difficult to be 100% historically accurate and why accuracy is really the last thing that you are concerned about majority of the time because you have a million other things to balance. So the next time that you end up in a conversation online with a bunch of costume Karens about like, oh, they just didn't have the right shoes, maybe this will be an interesting thing to think about in those conversations, because it's a lot more than just buying shoes. It's about balancing deadlines, needs, and a very, very tight budget typically as well. So hopefully this gets into all of that so that you have a better understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. Also, this was just a really exciting, fun thing for me to work on, and it was like my first really big costume design job. So it was really fitting that it was Emma, because I love Emma and I've always really appreciated Emma, even though I know a lot of people don't particularly love or adore her. Much like Jane herself, I find something entertaining about her, appreciate a little bit about Emma sometimes. The first step of all of this was shock and denial. So I was asked to do this, and that's kind of a big deal for me, a big deal for any costume designer. It is pretty hard out there sometimes, depending on where you are and what kind of your focus is. And actually back in January, I think, yeah, it was January of 2025, I got some emails, some messages about like, hey, would you be interested in designing for this? And I was like, give me more info. This is really cool. And so, yeah, I had a process of talking to people. I looked at some contracts and I signed some contracts, and it was real. I will say that overall, in terms of like my feelings, there was mostly it doesn't feel real, and then it was like, well, it's real, congratulations, we're doing this. So that's kind of the first step of costume design, is just shock and denial and grappling with your feelings. I guess if step one is shock and denial, I guess step two is actually doing the things you need to do your job. And one of the first things that you do as a costume designer is research. So I'm sure a lot of you know that I love Jane Austen. I've read her books a ton of times, especially like things like Emma, that has been one of my personal favorites. These are very close to my heart. But despite knowing Emma pretty well and knowing all the adaptations pretty well, step one is not going to be rereading Emma. Step one is actually reading the script that we are adapting. So I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people have misconceptions about with adaptation specifically is that you're adapting the book. You're not. You're adapting the screenplay. You're adapting what someone wrote for the specific thing that you're doing. And in that, you're also working with a big creative team, and you're working to make sure everything's cohesive between a lot of different departments. And I will get to that in a second. But again, the biggest thing to remember is I am not working on adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma. I'm working on an adaptation of Kate Hamill, the playwright, her version of Emma. That's totally different. Just like we all understand that Amy Heckerling's version of Emma is Clueless. This is really, I want you to get your mind kind of in that zone of, even if it's a Regency set thing, it is still not Jane Austen's Emma that you'll be watching on screen. It is through the filter of a million other things. Got it? So one of the first filters is the fact that like I need to read a script. So I read the script, I get the vibe from what it's going for, and I spend some time doing some research and some breakdowns. I will show you an example of a breakdown right now. So a script breakdown is just where you read the script and you make a bunch of notes for yourself. A lot of people are going to be making their own breakdowns that have different needs. The director will have a breakdown, the light folks are going to have a breakdown, like choreographers are going to have like everyone has a breakdown that really suits their needs. So this is what I put together for mine, and I specifically am noting different things around like costumes that are mentioned or times where a change might be necessary for things like this, because again, this is not Emma by Jane Austen. This is an adaptation of Emma written by Kate Hamill. There are going to be characters that are doubled. We're not going to have every single person mentioned in Emma by Jane Austen. We're going to have the handful of characters as mentioned by Emma by Kate Hamill. And in that, a lot of them are going to be doubling. So that means that there's going to be one person that's going to do two roles. Okay? And sometimes one character is played by two people. We'll get into that later, maybe. Or maybe I'll just make you come watch the play and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, with that as a challenge, you can already see that it's not just a straightforward, oh, I'm going to read the book and then I'm going to write my, I'm going to design my dream idea of what Emma is going to look like. No, that's not how it works, friends. Those are not the same thing. Honestly, think of it as like a big group project. And like, everyone has things really important that they're doing, but if ultimately you try a group project that like isn't cohesive, that like didn't meet the requirements of the actual assignment, then like you're not going to get a good grade, right? So think of it as a group assignment. In the research phase, obviously too, I'm doing my own historical research, really thinking about the vibe I want to go for, and also considering the budget. At some point during this, typically the designer will get an idea too of like the director, their vibe on what they're doing with the script, what their direction is, their creative point. And that's where I jumped off from, because I've been gathering kind of my own ideas, but I looked at what the director for this specific production wanted, what her vision was. She had the brilliant idea to associate every character in this production with a bird, which was brilliant, perfection, and absolutely inspiring and great. So I used that as like part of what I was doing. In terms of my research. So I made a bunch of boards, which I will show you some of here. I'm not going to show you every single board, but these are the things that you use in costume design to convey ideas. I put together a bunch of research on different 1815, because that's when the director wants it set at, 1815 clothing, different options for different classes, just some ideas of things that not only were real historical research, but also things that like I like the aesthetic of, things that I know that we might need to think about in terms of like looks, and like if I'm having to thrift a bunch of stuff, which I will have to thrift a bunch, what that would look like and how we can incorporate those kinds of things in this. And also again, quick changes. So we can get more into quick changes later, but the big thing is like when I'm designing, if I'm aware that like a character, as I saw in my costume breakdown, my script breakdown, if they have to suddenly be a different character in like 30 seconds, I need to give them an option to do that very fast. I don't think we actually have 30-second changes, but like we do have very quick changes sometimes, and you just need to think about that when you're making things, because guess what? Yeah, you could make them a historically accurate outfit, but if they don't actually have time to put it on, what was the point of it? That just becomes a problem for you later down the road. In that, like, I spent a lot of time looking at like historical stuff, and also looking at like kind of my vibe. You can see like in some of the boards, like I have my like kind of like modern vibe. I promise I will make a much longer in-depth video where I talk about every single character board, but the general thing that you should know is that my direction that I was taking in terms of design was that the stripes are one, very easy to obtain fabric, and a really good pattern that you can make across the board a theme, and a thing that I know I could find, right? It's of the time, if not a little bit earlier, but we can have fun with it. I think that the stripes also were a way to represent like the cages of birds. For me, it was also like the lines of society, the confines of society. So, to give you a little spoiler, the way that I saw that was that characters like Emma and Frank Churchill are going to flaunt their status, and therefore the stripes are going to be outside of their clothes. They're everywhere on their clothes because they are flaunting their status. They're using their status and their placement as a thing that is making up so much of their personality, so much of what they're doing, right? But then you have characters like Knightley who are going to have, yes, of course he's part of society, but it's more internalized. So you're going to see like stripes like on waistcoats or on liners. There are characters that are going to have lines and stripes across the bottom of their dresses because they're just little birds on a perch, like Jane Fairfax. You know, she doesn't really have a lot of agency. She is kind of really confined by a lot of factors in society. And then there's other things that I had that are fun and that like are little Easter eggy things. But that's one kind of my big thing. I thought stripes would be really easy fabric to thrift, which it was, and to find wherever I could. And yeah, so that's a little hint at my design ideas, because I think stripes are cute. They're of the period. I don't think we see enough of them. Yes, they're a little early, but like I think that we can see enough of it in like little details. Like it's cute to like bring it up to the full outfit, you know. They didn't completely go away when Regency dresses came into a thing. Like we saw there was some striping and stuff, and like, you know, even if you think about like Pride and Prejudice 2005, like they use a lot of ticking, which is a kind of like a stripe, right? Like it's a different kinds of woven in stripe versus the kind of very bold stripes that I'm using that are most of the time not woven in. They are bold printed designs. As a review, this book is not the script I'm adapting. I'm adapting a script written by Kate Hamill about Emma. I'm not adapting Emma. Sorry. So now that we've understood the book will not equal the script, let's talk about budget. Now, in the Divine dream world, I would have so much budget. I'd be able to hire out a whole costume space, a workshop, and like have them make custom pieces for every single person. Every single person would get historically accurate shoes, and it would all have like custom dye jobs. We'd have custom shoe colors, but that's not the world that we live in. So I had $1,500 to work with for this. I'm going to tell you this number because it's important, because I think that a lot of people have this idea of like, oh, you must have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. No, friends, this is a standard, like, yes, probably lower rate than across other parts of where I am in the metro area, kind of greater Bay Area, but like this is a price. Like, there are a lot of productions that do not pay much for the actual costumes, rely a lot on a costume designer being able to either have that stock readily available in the stuff that they already have at home, or have rental agreements that are really, really cheap. They really, really rely on not spending a lot of money on costumes. And I think that like this is a really good reality check, not only for like people wanting to get into this space, but also anyone who is like nitpicky about the costumes and things. Like really, really think about like, did they have a budget that was very big? Because they probably didn't, friend. If you're upset about the shoes or the cravats or the bonnets, oh god, the bonnets, we should talk about the bonnets. But like really it comes down to like budget, because like to me it's like $1,500 if I got historically accurate shoes, under things, which includes like a you know, an underdress, a chemise, corset, hose, all these things, which are not really viable for theatrical stuff, but regardless, a custom dress, like that money is gone for one character, for one change. When you're in a show like this, you have to consider how many people you have to put clothes on, and then on top of that, how many changes are they going to have? How are you going to use on stage changes to represent changes? Are they going to have to change backstage? How fast is that change? So there's a million little things to consider, and one of them really is budget, and budget kind of leads a lot of the conversation. So earlier I knew, even before I started doing design stuff, I knew in my contract how much my budget would be. With that being said, I went to tons of fabric swaps and stash busters, and I went to a bunch of thrift stores, honestly, tons of thrift stores, and I started just gathering the fabric that I knew I'd be needing. I started just gathering it and prepping it, because as soon as I got actor sizes and did some measurements, I knew I was go, go, go. But the biggest thing was I knew how much of that I could make, and I also knew that I could use some of the stock from the theater that I was working for, because I did have existing stock. So knowing that they already had some stock, knowing that I also had a ton of Regency stock, which I'm just going to use because we got to just make sure people have clothes on, I also knew that I could make some pieces. I knew that I didn't have enough money to pay other people to make some pieces. So there was a little percentage of like, I know that I have this much time and I know that I have this much fabric and I can make these exact nice pieces to go with things and to like really try to tell a story. And then I have a little bit of stuff that I'm gonna have to buy. I really, my goal was to have to buy as little as possible. And like the biggest thing was I always knew I have to buy probably like skins and socks. Skins are like the thing that catch your skin, like hose and like tank tops and things like that you wear as a barrier between your skin and like a like the costume. It's a thing in theater. I knew I have to buy that and like shoes and other things, notions, and honestly a couple of costume pieces, just that I don't have enough time. Like I'm one person. I think that there were a couple of pieces that like I designed that, or that I knew that I need to design and have ready, that I was the person that could make it because I knew exactly what I needed to do for it and how I wanted to like adjust it and have it ready for quick changes, because I have a lot of experience having done the quick change side of things. So I'm like, let's make this easy on those people. So it was just a complicated melange of like things, and deciding what needed to be made really came down to like what is in stock for a lot of these characters. Emma's main dress, because Emma never leaves stage, her main dress is custom. It's gotta be custom because it's Emma, is the lead character. But there are people who, you know, a lot of the men's jackets or waistcoats and pants, like a lot of them are going to have a mixture of things from stock, things that are bought, and things that I made. Like most of the men like are going to have like a cravat or waistcoat that I made, and that's fine. That's one thing that I got to make on everybody. There's also doing alterations on the existing stock. That's a thing. Again, like rental houses are an option for this. I really didn't see a lot of good options in the remaining rental houses that were around here. I will also show you like some breakdowns of like rental house costs. Like depending on the quality, some like a waistcoat can be a rental cost of $20 a month. And if you need to rent it for a like long show, like that's a lot of money that you're spending, right? So like if I'd rented a waistcoat that was just an okay waistcoat, I might have had to spend $40 plus cleaning on it, right? Plus dry cleaning on it. Let's say I spent $50, $60 total on a waistcoat. Well, would it just have been better for me to buy a waistcoat that exists that I can do minor alterations on and just throw it on somebody? Those are conversations to think about and have, especially when you have, again, a small budget. So that's hopefully helpful in understanding like where I was coming from. I definitely was like, this is my first go at it. I'm going to try to not use the Bezos boutique, as Sumali calls it, for a lot of ethical reasons. I thrifted so many things that I could, but also ultimately I had to buy a few things for this, and it sucks that like I didn't get to be like, oh, I made every single thing, but also I knew I wouldn't. And also I knew that like there wasn't really anything in like the remaining rental spaces that like worked for what I wanted. And alas, custom pieces cost a ton of money if I wanted to pay someone else to make it. So that hopefully explains like where we are in like budgety considerations. Okay, let's get to the bonnets. Let's just get to the bonnets. Wait. Are you ready to talk about bonnets? I'm ready to talk about the bonnets. So here's the thing, friends. Whether you're on stage or in a movie, bonnets are a fucking nightmare. In one of the first meetings I had with everybody, and I knew this coming in, I really didn't think about putting a ton of bonnets on people, but in one of the first meetings I had with the team, all the designers, bonnets were mentioned, and immediately there was like, okay, well, if we do bonnets, you need to consider. And it was fine. I had mostly said like bonnets probably would be the thing that like people hold. Maybe they're like in the process of just taking them off as they come on stage. But I knew they wouldn't be a thing that we'd want on stage. And I want to explain to you the response from every person in the room, or like every department, like the concerns from every department. So that hopefully the next time you hear a million people be like, oh, there's a bonnet shortage in this era of like new Regency stuff and it's stupid. Oh, it's not accurate. They have no respect for history. Blah, blah, blah. Now you will know why bonnets are a nightmare. First of all, there's the hair. So we're using wigs, obviously. Most of the time you're going to have wigs. You're going to have someone styling the hair on like a live set, probably. But like for theater, you're using a wig. Do you know what happens when you take on and off a bonnet? First of all, it's going to crush any beautiful things that were done to that wig. Second of all, it's going to catch on things. It's going to do this. It's going to mean that someone's going to have to redo that wig a ton of times and restyle that wig and spend a ton of time on that wig. If you don't have a large staff, you don't have individual people for every single person, every single wig. You don't have infinite hours for those people to go and restyle wigs. Think about that when you think about like the basic logistics of this goes on someone's head and it will ruin someone else's work, because wigs and hair and makeup are their own spaces, their own departments. Wigs are often put in with hair and makeup. We call them wham. But wigs and makeup are honestly two different things, okay? They should, like, in big houses, they are two different things. In this little one, it's only one person. But, like, I need you to understand, this is not an easy thing to have happen in live theater. And it's not an easy thing to happen on, like, actual filming. Like, please understand, like, when you take off a hat, your hair's gonna get messed up. And it causes so much delays in, like, filming, but also it's going to cause problems with a wig, and you're going to be destroying someone else's work, and it's not cool. On top of the wig situation, there's also the lighting situation. Now, I have direct sunlight on my face right now, but if I had stage lighting coming from the top, and I have this on, and the lighting's coming from here or from here, you wouldn't see my face, would you? Think about lighting. So lighting is a huge concern. It's a concern on like a live film set too, right? But like, you want to make sure you can see the actor's face. They want to make sure people can see their face. Like, they're acting, this is their thing. It's the most basic thing that you wouldn't want to cover up someone's face. And like, yeah, this is a shorter bonnet, but guess what? It's still going to be blocking light in a bunch of places. So think about the lighting. There's also the audio thing. Like, if you've got mics, how are people going to hear? Like, it might get muffled depending on what kind of mic situation you have. If there's just like, if they have a mic on them, it might get muffled. If there's like mics, like just around, like, and like not attached to them, like, it might be hard for them to project and it to be heard. Like, it's also just like, if you have no mics, like, it might be hard to just hear them if they're turned this way and you're muffled by a thing. So there's sound problems. There's also just like a safety problem that I think a lot of people don't think about, which is if someone has a bonnet on and they're acting, they're not looking down, and they also have limited range. So if you have people out like on a stage, this can really limit their range of vision. So it's a safety problem. Does this all make sense? This is a safety thing. It's a whole thing, and it is not just about accuracy. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into conversations about everything in production, like bonnets. So I hope that our bonnet break was useful, educational. Please stop complaining about the bonnets, because honestly, every time people complain about the lack of bonnets, all I can think is, you don't know what you're talking about. Now you know, and if you hear people complain about bonnets, send them to me. Send them to me, or send them this bonnet rant. I wanted to end this video with just kind of talking about where we are now in terms of like where I am now in this process, and like how did I get here? Just like Cotton Eye Joe, where did I come from? Where did I go? January, I got the ask to do this. I spent some time talking through contracts and stuff. I don't remember my first meeting for this was. Might have been April. I presented my ideas, I think, in May. And then I wrapped my semester and also an opera that I was working on in May. And I finally got to go and get actors' sizes because I started rehearsals. So I got their measurements. I started looking through the stock that they had at the theater. And I started looking at my stock and I just started building. So June, and we are in July. I have a ton of costumes that are almost done. I have a handful of costumes that have not been tried on people yet. This show starts August 1st, obviously. By the time we get to dress tech, which is basically when you're doing, for people who don't do theater, you do rehearsals, then you do tech, which is like where everything is added. All the lighting stuff, all the sound stuff, all the things. And costumes are part of tech. So it's really getting to like we're not just having actors on stage talking to each other and acting, we're having them do it with all the things. that is when I need to have the costumes ready and done by. So like obviously like end of this month. I'm pretty easily gonna make that deadline. I say this, knock on all the things. But yeah, like I just really have alterations at this point. Like I will share with you some of the things that I've done later on to like explain some things. Like I already talked about a little bit of them when I talked about some of the characters and stuff, but yeah, I hope to have more photos and stuff for y'all. And if again you want to see this, this is Emma at Silicon Valley Shakes in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's in South Bay, like San Jose area, if you're familiar with the area at all. If you're not, that didn't help you much. If you're actually familiar with the area, you'd be like, but where? And I'd be like, it's Sanborn. You'd be like, I've heard of that. Haven't been there. And I'd be like, yeah, this is a great opportunity for you to go there. So it's playing in August. Please do come and see it and tell me what you think about my first design foray. And now that you know a little bit more about like behind the scenes, I hope that you like will enjoy it. If you do come, let me know. I'd love to like say hi to people. I will not be at every performance. I will definitely be at the opening. But I might sneak and do some more things because it's really fun and exciting. It's exciting to think about my work being on stage and like all the work that I put into it. But I also promise that I will be doing more in-depth videos, at least one more, maybe two, if people have questions. I will do one that really goes in detail about every character and like have the finished look along with it. Just so you can have an idea of like where I went. And then the other thing is, I hope to maybe do like an AMA about this if people have questions about it. I'd love to answer any questions folks have, especially like getting really nitty gritty into the historical details, because I did spend a bunch of time researching the historical details, even though I'm sure people will be like, some of these dresses are just so basic and they're not of the era. I'd be like, you know, it's an empire waisted dress and I added trim to it and everyone had clothes. So that's all I care about. I wanted to say thank you so much for being here and for following this journey. I know that I have been very busy with costume design school and costume like jobs now. But if you do have questions about it, let me know. I hope to do an AMA later this summer about Emma, and then hopefully maybe some AMA stuff about like just overall costume design stuff. I have some fun little quick change things that I've done for this that might be fun for other folks. If you want to learn how to make a quick change cravat or things like that, I've made some little fun things for the show. Shout out to the Jane Con team. Thank you so much for doing what you do. Shout out to the other presenters for Jane Con. Please check out the programming, guys. It's gonna be great. It's a fun time. And if you missed anything, don't forget that you can watch things later on replay. With that, thank you for joining me, and don't forget to make it so. Also, I'll see you at Emma this summer, right? Okay, like one last thing I will tell you. In design school, they're like, you have to make sketches. You have to make a million renderings of things. You have to make a million sketches of things because that's how it's done. Friends, I had no time to make sketches, okay? Because like, sketches are going to take me a while. Making full renderings is going to take me a while. I put together boards to explain what I was doing, what my vision is, and people just trusted me, which is great because there's no time. Sometimes there's just no time. Sometimes you just gotta be like, here's what we're going for. Is this cool? Yeah, great. Then like, let's go for it. And like that is the brilliance of having somebody who trusts you. Thank you for trusting me with this. I hope I did okay. Okay, so like I thought about bringing you along and doing this whole video in my sewing space. But like, you gotta understand, it's not good in here. It's bad. Look, it's bad. You didn't want to be in here. But like, hey, look at my pretty threads. Don't they look great?